So to start off, this recipe is super simple and straightforward. It's essentially like a crudo or sushi or even a ceviche minus the acid. And we're going to use the squash blossom itself as a little packet to hold this mixture of squash and fish. The squash, and when we cook this, we're barely searing it just to wilt the squash blossom. So the fish will be raw and the vegetable will be raw too. And that's going to provide some contrasting crunch to the softness of the fish. So we're going to start off, we're going to take some of our squash. Let me fix this here. And we're going to slice the squash. We want to get these slices here fairly thin because then we're going to dice everything up. So you can see roughly how thin I have this. So you cut these slices and then you lay the squash on the cutting board and you're going to cut what they call a batonette or a lardon. So these kind of matchstick-like pieces. And you're going to do those. Part of my wobbliness, I'm sitting at a little table here. And then after that, you're going to cut these into a small dice. And you're going to end up with pieces like this. So this is a pretty straightforward technique for many vegetables. This works for everything from squash to carrots to onions, you name it, for making a small dice. And keep in mind, your dice doesn't have to be perfect. So if you end up with pieces like this and pieces like this, it's okay. As long as you find it delicious, you're good to go. So we've got some of the squash diced up. We're going to put in a bowl. Same thing we just did for the squash, we're going to do for the garlic. We're going to cut these little slices and then cut them again the other way. And this will mince it up. And then you can run your knife through it again to get even smaller pieces. The finer you have the garlic, the more even its heat will be in the food. So keep that in mind too. When cutting chives, just kind of fold them up into like a small packet. Makes handling them easier. And you cut, and by the time the knife gets to your fingers, leave the knife in place on the cutting board and gently slide your fingers back. So the knife got to my fingers, and I think you can see that. I'm using the knife to keep the chives in place, and this prevents them from kind of opening up and going all over the place. Trick is if you, and I'm sorry we didn't include this in the instructions, if you par freeze it, meaning if you put it in the freezer for like 30 minutes to an hour, so I can still feel, it still feels icy, but it's still a little flexible. This is going to make slicing it and dicing it so much easier. And is really going to help out with cutting the fish. And your dice on your fish can be a little bigger, a little smaller. What you want to keep in mind when you're doing something like this is, how is a piece this size going to feel in your mouth when you bite into it? If you like a bigger bite, then go for it. If you like a smaller bite, then go for it. All right, so we have our bowl. We've got our squash, our fish, our garlic, our chives in here. And the last little part we're going to put in is this miso. And miso is something you should be able to find anywhere these days, from Giant Eagle to an Asian market. We even produce a bunch of different ones at Larder, and I'm using one of the ones that we made with white beans. And what you're going to do now is just kind of use your spoon to kind of spread the miso around. And you want this all to kind of develop a little bit of a sticky like texture. You may need a little splash of oil to help you out, to help get stuff nice and sticky. But most of the time with raw fish and then adding miso, which has salt in it, it's going to draw some moisture out. And you should get pretty sticky on your own. And you can tell, like, I'm picking up a spoonful and it all falls off in one clump. So that's how I kind of know it's starting to stick together, as opposed to little pieces just falling off. So here's how my mixture looks. And you can always check it for seasoning. That's pretty delicious. All right, so at this point, you want to hold your squash blossom like this and take a spoonful of the filling and just put it in there. You don't want to pack too tight or else the blossom is going to bust open. These are pretty fragile. And I like to give it just a little twist at the end and kind of squeeze it to kind of crimp it in place. So you'll do that for all your blossoms. In summer, like this one's super tiny. This one looks like it's going to be like a half spoonful in here. Okay, so I got my last one here.
Yeah, this is a cast iron pan that Allie got me some 15 years ago. I love it. It's great. We cook almost everything in it. Cast iron is great because it's non-stick. So this little one's definitely ready. These bigger ones, we're going to give them just another moment here.
They look nice. And these definitely, they're heated through. The outer layer of the filling, the fish is going to have a little cooked texture. And then the inside's going to still be nice, soft, and buttery.